This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Speak Up. I'm so excited to have a special guest with me today and a sponsor of the podcast as well. I had the privilege of discussing this topic before this podcast was launched with Cecil at their headquarters in Ogden, Utah. Beautiful Ogden, Utah. We were there for the Mars Marketing Conference. I remember the morning very clearly. Cecil, you and I were standing outside. It's beautiful sunrise hitting those mountains, and we were just ideating on something we could talk about. And the topic of assumptions came up, and we were talking about communication in marriages. And I think this is going to be a great episode. Thanks for joining me.
I'm so glad to be here. By the way, I'm a horrible communicator, according to my wife and many of the people around me, but I'm going to give it my best today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And before we give it our best, let's go ahead and say thank you for our sponsors for this program. Looking to take your shop to the next level of quality service, team culture, and overall profitability? At the Institute, we provide personalized coaching that aligns with your goals of financial stability, excellent customer service, and employee satisfaction. Our priority is helping you establish significant and sustainable progress. We work with you to create strategies that reduce the stress of running your business, improve your quality and performance, and optimize your profitability. Experience the benefits of professional coaching by visiting wearetheinstitute.com/business-assessment. Hey friends, as you know, I'm a proud member of the AutoFlow team, and let me tell you, we've changed how business is done for auto shops everywhere. We support your client experience before, during, and after the work is done. Imagine this: timely updates sent directly to your clients, branded digital vehicle inspections, and seamless communication from start to finish. That's why shops love AutoFlow. And hey, with those 5-star reviews rolling in, you'll wonder how you ever managed without us. Take an important next step and take your auto shop to the next level. Visit www.autoflow.com. Get on board with an AutoFlow trial. Are you ready to meet your perfect auto repair shop management software partner? Well, say farewell to the days of transactional relationships and hello to a true partnership that elevates your business. The number one all-in-one solution is Autoleap. You're not just getting software, you're gaining a dedicated ally committed to your success. Autoleap will help you sell more, save time, and delight your customers at every turn. From scheduling appointments to creating estimates, generating invoices, managing technicians, and seamlessly syncing with QuickBooks to keep your records updated. Experience the difference a true partnership makes. Visit Autoleap.com and book a demo today. Autoleap, your trusted partner for success. Want to see your auto repair shop thrive? Are you looking to drive more customers to your auto repair shop? Let ShopDog Marketing be your guide. Our customer-first approach, combined with AI-driven creative content, ensures top rankings. Dominate mobile first and voice search with our specialized expertise. Reach out to ShopDog Marketing today and start growing your business. Don't miss out on this chance to boost your business. Visit shopdogmarketing.com. Inbound has exclusively served independent auto repair shops with expert communication solutions for years. Our robust VoIP platform ensures you stay connected while our industry-leading AI analytics take your business to the next level. We provide the tools you need to understand your customers and optimize every interaction. Choose Inbound for proven expertise and unmatched innovation. Visit callinbound.com and discover the difference we can make. Okay. Thank you so much, Cecil, for being here with me today. Thank you again for helping us get this going. I think that it's hilarious. You indicate that you are not always a great communicator. Many of us who know you, we hear your awesome voice deep and projecting from anywhere that you're teaching nearby, and it's connecting and it's resonating, but it isn't always the case in some of our other relationships.
Yeah, the biggest struggle that I have personally is communicating. I'm just amazed sometimes where, we'll be in a meeting and I'll talk about something, and 3 weeks later, nobody remembers what I talked about, or they took it away in a different way. And so I've got a great story. By the way, coming up on 43 years of marriage. So,
Nice work,
but
sir.
but just like every other marriage, we've had our ups and downs. And I had been married about 8 years, 2 beautiful little children. I tried to be like the perfect man, the way my father taught me, right? And my dad was from Oklahoma. They came out during the Dust Bowl, went through the Great Depression.
Sure.
Very kind of stoic family, the very, very role defined. So the man earns the income, works whatever it takes, brings home the money. The wife takes care of the home, blah, 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 blah. And as long as you're, paying the bills and being nice to your family and taking care of your kids and your wife, you should be okay, right? That's the premise, okay? And so when we start talking about assumptions, we make a lot of assumptions about other people based on what our experiences are and who we are. And I think the older we get, we still make those assumptions, but we realize that there are a lot of assumptions that we make, okay? When I was younger, when I got married, so my mother was technically insane. She had a mental disability. She was very physical, emotional, abusive, screaming, yelling, etc. So when I decided to have my own house, I decided I didn't want any of that in my home. Okay. So growing up, it was nothing to see my mother or my dad kind of go off on each other, throw something. I remember one morning, Dad, something they were arguing about. We had this kind of a breakfast bar. Dad was sitting there. Mom always made breakfast, and Dad just swept all the food in the floor, and they were yelling at each other, and then he just left. So this is the experience, right, growing up. So when I got married, I said, I don't want that in my home. So when I came home, I was very quiet. Again, probably stoic is a good word for that. I thought I was doing everything right. I provided a nice home. I provided food. I provided shelter, clothing, and I didn't scream and yell. I didn't display anger the way that my parents had displayed anger. Okay. Also, I'm a technician. That's where I started. And what does a technician do all day, right? We find what's wrong. We're fixers, right?
Yeah.
So
get the tangible results of that thing being fixed and feel good.
And we're frustrated if we can't fix something.
Yes, especially if it's easy.
Yeah. So, and you have to understand, like, if I'm dealing with anybody, your background is different than my background. You've had different experiences. Your parents were different than mine. We could talk about socially how we're different. We could talk about age-wise how we're different. We could talk about education-wise. I mean, there's so many major differences, right? And so in my family, I gave you the rundown. If somebody made food, like my mom made a meal and you didn't like it, you said, don't cook this again, right? It was, and in my wife's house, they never fought, never argued, nothing. And if somebody made a meal, if it was the worst thing that you've ever eaten, you ate it, you smiled, and you said, thank you, right?
Sure.
And some people would say that's not necessarily healthy because you're not working out your differences. So after 43 years, if you keep eating the stuff that you don't like, maybe that throws you off. But here we are about 8 years into our marriage. And, I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing. I think I'm paying attention to my wife's needs and blah, blah, blah. I'm assuming a lot of things. She's assuming a lot of things. And I come home one day, I don't even remember what happened, but she said, I don't love you anymore. I'm filing for divorce.
Wow.
Okay. And I thought, you could have hit me with a sledgehammer right then.
Sure.
And it wouldn't have done any more damage because I thought I was doing everything right. Okay. Right. And so I was completely blindsided. I didn't understand. I didn't get it, etc.
Sure. And what was your emotion behind that? Like anger?
You get angry first, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't
surprises
deserve
will
this.
do that.
Yeah. And I think anyone that's had that experience, you start thinking someone else is going to be raising my kids. She's going to take half my stuff. There's all the bad stuff that just rushes into your mind. I'm stubborn as heck. I left the house after we, I think the first time we ever raised our voice at each other after 8 years. Wow. And I'm sitting in a cheap motel room at like 2 a.m. And I'm like, well, this is stupid. The first thing is, well, I bought the house and I paid for that house. That's my house. I went home and I knocked on the door and I said, I want to stay married, but also until the judge kicks me out of the house, I'm going to be living here. And you don't have to sleep with me. You don't even have to be in the same room with me. But that master bedroom, that's where I'll be sleeping, right? And I'd like to go to therapy, blah, blah, blah. So we spent a ton of money on therapy. And I probably learned the best lesson that I've ever learned in my entire life about communication. And it is this idea of assumptions, right? So, and here's from my point of view. And I bet if you talk to my wife, you get a completely different point of view, right? But so we went to a counselor and we started talking. And what was going on at the time in my life was I was working for my dad. I felt really trapped. I love my dad and I wanted to support my dad, but he was one of those old time shop owners that we still run across who all they do is they work and they hope that they work hard enough to make money, right? He wasn't running his business well because he didn't know how to. He knew how to fix cars. And I had come in and I'd been working for him probably for about 8 years, probably for longer than I'd been married. I was very frustrated with him and with the shop in the business because there was no progress. There was a change in Palm Springs where we lived at the time, and they brought in gambling, and down valley in Palm Desert, about 17 miles away, they built this beautiful mall and these beautiful condominiums on golf courses and et cetera. And so a lot of our clients left Palm Springs and went down valley. And, they came back to us once, twice, maybe 3 times. But after a while, they found somebody closer to them.
Right.
The number one reason that people go to the shop, the business they go to, is because it's convenient. And so for the first time in many years, our business was declining, right? So if you went 10 years earlier, if you were in Palm Springs and your car broke down and you stopped somebody on the street and you said, hey, I need my car fixed. Is there a good mechanic around? They would go, you need to see Cecil, right? And that was my dad, not me, right?
Correct. Okay.
And so, but 10 years later, so 9 out of 10 people would tell you need to see Cecil. And 10 years later, maybe 2 out of 10, right? Because the new people came in to support the casinos, old people moved out, just a change in the environment, right? And I went to my dad and I said, hey, we need to market for the first time ever. We got to spend some money on marketing, get our name out there. I think I spent $300 at the time. Now, we're back in the, late 80s now.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And I spent $300 on an ad in a Jewish senior center newsletter. Right. And in the first 2 weeks, we had about $1,000 worth of work come off of it. Great. But my dad was still angry with me that I spent the money. Right. Sure. He didn't see the relationship. So extremely frustrated. And I don't want to go home and take that out on my wife and kids. Yeah. Right. But when I go home, I'm very quiet and sullen.
Oh, my goodness. I'm hearing our background stories aren't that different.
Right. And so,
wow.
8 years of that. And with my wife, you also have to understand personalities. I'm a D personality. That's a director. That's a red. That's an alpha. That's a, take charge. Say whatever you think you need to say. That's my personality. Yeah. My wife is an S. S's are supporters. Supporters want to help everyone. They live to help other people. So I'm coming home every day and she's doing her best to take care of the kids, clean the house, make a nice meal, all of that.
Yes.
But I'm not giving her any feedback that's positive.
Right. And this is leading up to that point where she's asking for the divorce. So you're dealing with all these stresses of the family business, family tension on that stuff, coming home fried, probably emotionally drained. Yeah. Yes. And how much we depend on these people behind us is not being acknowledged is what it sounds like.
Yeah. And so the assumption on her part was that my sullenness, my quietness was because she was not making me happy. Okay. And the assumption on my part was because I'm doing what I know to do and I'm not screaming and yelling, that I'm doing the right thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what neither
Wow.
one of us took into account was neither one of us looked at the other person and said, how are they interpreting what we're doing, how we're doing it, right? So if I had been my wife and I made a great meal and I kept the house clean and blah, 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 and she came home from work and I felt like she wasn't recognizing what I did, I'd say, what the hell, right? What's wrong? And then we could communicate, right? Maybe
yeah.
then we would say, well, what's wrong is you come home and you don't say anything and you're quiet and you don't say thank you and you don't, when you eat, you're still quiet. You don't
Yeah.
even, blah, blah, blah. And then you watch TV and then you go to bed, right? And
Yeah.
if I had been her, those are the kind of things I would have said, but I'm not her. So I don't communicate that way, right?
Wow.
And then if she was me, or I don't know, here I am. I'm getting confused already. Who am I? But if she had been me, she would have spoke up. And if I had been, if she had been in my shoes, she would have been quiet too, right?
Yeah.
But
Correct.
so $17,000 worth of therapy, and think about
Wow.
17 grand in the late 80s.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a commitment to commitment, though. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that.
What I learned was never assume that the other person understands you or is interpreting what you're doing the way that you think that they should be interpreting what you're doing. And so, her being an S personality, a supporter, wanting to make me happy. In therapy, what we kind of came to was, I'm going to come home from work and I'm probably not going to be happy, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm also not the happiest guy in the world. I mean, don't
Not a
get me
natural
wrong.
upper. Yeah.
Yeah, not me usually. I'm looking for what's wrong, trying to fix it, usually a little frustrated. And what happened was with the therapist said, okay, Carrie, when he comes home, you want him to say, oh, the house is so clean and blah, blah, blah. But he's not in a place where he can do that. So give him 30, 45 minutes and let him go outside and, kick the tree, yell at the dog, whatever. And then, Cecil, when you come in, you need to go, thank you for some of this and show some appreciation no matter what space you're in.
Yeah.
And so what I've tried to do throughout my entire life, and the reason I say I'm not a great communicator, because I'm just not as successful as I'd like to be, is that when I have a conversation with anyone, I try to say things like, what does that mean to you? Or what did you hear? Or, could you repeat that back to me so that I understand what you're thinking? Even with all of that and, I don't know, 40 plus years of practice, I still am routinely misinterpreted. And I routinely misinterpret other people's thoughts, actions, and words.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
this is the normal thing for a lot of us. And I was reading, actually been reading Book of Five Rings by Musashi. Dangerous to make a correlation to a warrior book to speaking, but he's quoted in there, time must be devoted to training however gifted a man.
yeah. You can't, number one, assume that you are right. I think being a business owner, being a husband, being a father who was raised the way that I was raised, you have to have, people talk about he's prideful or he's too self-assured or whatever. You have to be self-assured because you can't lead a company, and I don't even think you can lead a family or a group if you don't have some assurance that you're going in the right direction, doing the right thing.
Confidence shows those that will depend on you that you are dependable. Right.
Because if you're like leading your company and you're going, well, geez, I'm just not sure if we're going to survive this week. Or, if you're showing that kind of weakness, I mean, you can, inside your head, you can have all the doubts that you want to have. But when you go to lead a company and you're trying to change, I don't know, behavior and actions and results, you have to be somewhat assured that what you're doing is the right thing, even if it's not.
Even if it's not. A captain of the
Right?
ship doesn't need, it matters not if he's right or wrong. What he cannot be is unsure.
Yeah.
There'd be death to the crew.
And so I think some people interpret that as prideful or whatever. But for me, it's like a necessity of my being, who I need to be, right? And, Muhammad Ali, if you want to be a champion, act like a champion. I think Michael Jordan has another saying that is kind of the same thing. If fake it till you make it kind of thing. I've been faking it my entire life. I have the same doubts that everybody has. In fact, I don't know, maybe more because of the way I was brought up. But I can't have those doubts when I'm leading a company or teaching a class or whatever that's going to be that I'm doing.
Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword. When you have a high degree of confidence, and a lot of times you're right about a lot of things, but that confidence is juxtaposed with assumptions sometimes as well. If you're confident that you understand the way another person feels, for example, it could lead to a lack of intent on probing that situation a little bit more and considering.
And I think if you're like a D personality or someone that struggles with these kind of things, it's even more important that you create a habit of checking in, asking, right? Am I giving you what you need? Do you feel supported? Do you, what else could I do for you that would help you feel good about who we are, what we're doing, et cetera?
Yeah, checking in with intentionality sounds like a key takeaway for free for our listeners for $17,000 for you.
Yeah, well, lessons learned. They say the biggest mistakes we make, the hardest lessons we learned are the most valuable, right?
Sure, yes.
I think it's all the mistakes I've made in my life in every area, every aspect that has made me a better human, a better person, a better leader. I've certainly made tons of mistakes in my relationship with my wife, even in my relationship with my kids. But I think the lesson learned, like when my oldest boy was 14 or 15, he was going off the deep end with friends. And he and I couldn't communicate. We had nothing. He didn't like me. I was the bossy authoritarian, don't go smoke dope with your friends. Don't drink. Don't, you got to get A's in school. You got to be somebody, blah, blah, blah. And it's a natural, having had 4 children, they all kind of went through it at some point. But him and I, we couldn't communicate. So one day he's telling me about him and his buddies going fishing. They're going to go fishing. They're going to go fishing. It's about the 4th or 5th time. And I have all this old fishing gear, rods and reels and stuff sitting in the garage, kind of buried under a bunch of crap that I used to fish. But what I did was I took him. I said, you're coming with me today. And I don't know, Saturday, Friday afternoon, whatever. We went down to Sportsman's Warehouse and I said, you're going to teach me how to fish.
Nice.
So what do we need? And we bought rods and reels and all the stuff, right, together. I had the financial means to be able to do that, which helps.
Yes.
But then now we had all this stuff. And even though we weren't talking to each other, it was like, okay, we're going to go fishing now. And for us, fishing was usually night fishing, catfish, etc. So we would go out at like 10 o'clock in the evening, which, by the way, if he was me, he wasn't where? Right. and we'd be sitting at this local lake or river or something with our lines in the water. And what do you do from 10 to 3 in the morning when there's nothing else going on and nobody else there? Right. You talk to each other.
Yeah.
And so
beautiful.
That was a healthy financial investment.
Yeah.
But it has paid off in spades. I have great relationships with my children.
That's
right?
beautiful. Yeah. And that teach me moment for the confident, assertive father to essentially not necessarily stoop, but stoop and let them become an expert in something that you can learn beside them. That's beautiful.
It saved, I believe that saved our relationship. I don't know that I could have done that if I didn't learn, kind of the lesson of looking for, how do I help the other people around me? How do I help my wife feel good about her role and what she's chosen to do in our family? How do I help my children feel good about, who they are and what they've chosen to do. Not one of my children, other than maybe Kent, is doing exactly what I thought they might be doing. Right.
Nice.
I remember
and we're glad he is.
Yeah, we are. And he's amazing. So
I know it. Yeah.
but it's helped me with my children. It's helped me with my people in my company. It's helped me as a presenter. And I don't know if I'm an authority figure or an expert in the industry, but it's helped me there also, because when I'm teaching, I'm paying attention to the crowd and I'm thinking, how are they taking this and what can I do to help them understand this better? I think it's also helped me as a salesperson be really good selling people, because if you're thinking about the other person instead of about, I have to deliver this message. I listen to a lot of phone calls for service advisors, just part of my job. The calls are 20% good,
Yeah,
and
right.
and 80% terrible.
Yeah.
And it's not that the person on the service advisor answering the phone is bad or they're not energetic.
Yeah, none of us can be our best on every call. It'd be a wonderful target, but perfection,
but
hard to hit.
We teach this get that customer in here mentality, and then we put these people under pressure. They've got 15 cars in the shop, 3 techs that are standing there, all the things that are going on, and the phone is ringing, and we expect them to literally be at their best every time the phone rings, and it's not even possible.
Yeah, and we're a relationship business, right? We're a relationship business. We're a relationship business. We pound this into the ground, and then we don't give our service advisors the time, the breathing space, or anything else. This was one of the premises of the talk I gave when I was at Mars meeting with you guys. And the slide that resonated, I feel like the most with some people, is I showed them all the things we're asking for those advisors. And then I showed them the things they can do when the relational ability is diminished from their capacity to do it. And it's like 5 things that we can do, all the base level stuff.
And what you really should be asking is, when you're on the phone, of course, be energetic, of course, smile and act like you care, right? And all of that, because all that matters. But what we really should be saying is, listen to the other person.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. You will get nothing out of it unless you can stop and listen. There's a tip. So I do a lot of rucking and do a lot of walking, and I've listened to a lot of stuff on how to get better with your breath, how to get better with your endurance and everything. And there's this old Indian trick. I think the Apaches recognize as one of the most, they could go and go and go and go and go and go. And there's this trick that they have when they're very young. They would take a sip of water and hold it in their mouth. And if you had to swallow it or spit it out or whatever, you need more practice. And I'm thinking sometimes what advisors need to do is let's apply this to phone calls and take a sip and hold it there and see what the other person says. And if you have to spit it out to start talking, you need more practice.
Yeah. It's funny, as I'm thinking here, Pareto's law, the 80-20 rule, it really should be, we would be great 80% of the time and bad 20% of the time. And the reason why it should be that is if we were listening with the intent to understand the other person and what their needs are, their stresses are, most of the time, the other person is going to tell us what they need or what they want. And sometimes we can meet that, like if somebody calls me and says, hey, I want to bring my own parts, I can't meet that. I have a standard in my business. I won't do that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, you have boundaries still.
But if somebody calls me and says, I really need to understand, how much does this cost? What are they really asking, right? What are they really looking for? What do they really want? 90% of the time, 80% of the time, it's not about the cost. It's, are you the place that's going to treat me fairly and take good care of me? And is this going to be easy or is this going to be hard? And
what kind of relationship is this? Yeah.
Yeah. I remember a very specific phone call recently. I'm listening to it. Service advisor picks up the phone. It's like, Bob's, which, by the way, boy, we just started off on the wrong foot. And the customer goes, do you guys align Teslas? Right? There's this hesitation. Well, yeah, we do alignments. Right? So right there, you can tell that the service advisor's dejected, doesn't give a crap about the phone call, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the customer they go on to have a 32-minute conversation. Okay.
Wow.
Never once does the service advisor really understand the potential client. Okay. He asked him, why do you think you need alignment? He said, well, I just had tires put on my car. And he goes, okay, well, yeah, we could align it. And then they go back down the road of this guy's really looking for someone that knows Tesla and can do a good alignment on a Tesla. That's all the guy needed to hear, right?
Yeah, he was looking for some assurances that he's making the right choice.
Yeah. And
because it's a Tesla. Not a lot of shops have that experience, tools or
to
technology.
do it.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, I know the shop and they would align a Tesla easily, right?
Mhm.
No big
Sure.
deal. And
We love Teslas. You've called the right shop.
Of course. And oh my gosh, I know how expensive those tires are. We better get you in quickly and get that alignment taken care of.
Bingo.
Right?
Yeah. Assurance. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if we're not listening, right, then we can't hear. And if we can't hear, we can't adjust. And if we can't adjust, we're going to fail more often than we succeed.
It's spot on because this is, again, the assumption on a service advisor is that we fix cars. I fix the car thing. He's talking about car thing. I talk about the car thing. He's clearly that, like, this is cut and dry and the same thing. So like back to the marriage point too, it's like, this is in your conversations with your wife that followed, you have 43 years under your belt now. And that doesn't happen automatically because you fixed one thing once.
Oh, no. I mean,
and so
marriage is like constant adjustment.
You were talking about like how this assumption topic very specifically that you weren't necessarily recognizing where she was coming from. So how do you do that now? What's your intentions on that? Is it a line of questioning? Is it creating the space for that stuff? What's one of the things you do?
So we're all creatures of habit.
Yes.
And my natural habit is to come home and find out what's wrong and point that out. And I have to change that habit. If it's a post-it note on my dashboard that says, recognize something good, right? Or, a note on my computer that pops up every day that says, find the good in people. If it's when I'm teaching communication, I'm saying one of the key points of communication, number one, get rid of distraction. So if I really want to talk to you, I can't have the TV playing back here. I can't have my cell phone on, blah, blah, blah. So, but one of the real key points is to sit down, get rid of the distraction, and put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was the wife and I had been home with the kids all day and I had cleaned the house and I had made a nice meal, what would I want? And that is not the habit that we have. The habit that we have from, I don't know, you come to sales class and we're teaching you, go, push, listen to the customer, but then have the solution, right?
Yeah,
tie them in,
tie
them in. If you want to build, a really solid relationship with anybody, there are going to be a lot of times where you're not going to understand them. You're going to misinterpret them. You need to be asking, is this really what you want or need?
And let's face it, you can't fix the problem. That shouldn't be the goal of having the conversation. It's listening to understand them.
I actually still think that the goal is to fix the problem.
Oh, of course it is.
Right?
But if you try to do it in every conversation, drives people nuts.
I have some people in my life who are actually extremely obnoxious because they always have the answer to everything. And even I'll go, blah, 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 blah. And they'll go, oh, that's not right. Blah, blah, blah. And you go,
actually,
yeah. Now all of a sudden you're at loggerheads. You're going to fight instead of, and I think the other thing, one of the other key things is, what mountain do you want to die on? What hill do you want to die on? Right? Do I want my marriage to go south because I was too prideful to say I didn't understand you correctly, or I didn't give you what I should have given you, or, hey, I don't know what you want. How can I give you what you want if I don't understand what that is? Help me understand.
Yeah. I mean, there's a team function to this. And one of these days soon, our talk actually, even in Ogden, inspired me on this too. So I want to have my wife come on here as well. As we shared our struggles and my stressful years of the business too. And I think it'll be a lot of fun to have a conversation and let her share her perspective of me
Absolutely.
coming from that time. Because when I tell these stories, and Cecil, I appreciate you telling your story as you have too, because a lot of the shop owners, and I know this is true for you too, experience similar scenarios with their wives. The people that are trying so hard to take care of them and help them, because they see us come home. They see the stress on our face, and their inclination, especially as a supporter, my wife's absolutely one of those supporters, is to help and to fix. And they do all these things, get the house as nice as they can, keep the kids as clean as they can, and all the things. And it's not making a dent sometimes. And it's frustrating for them too.
If you're a perfectionist too, my dad, I don't know if it was quote unquote beat into me, and don't take it wrong, my dad didn't beat me. I was raised with the belt. That's different than getting beaten.
Sure.
But my dad always said, if you have the time to do it a second time, you have the time to do it right the first time.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I'm in many ways a perfectionist. And so, but how much perfection is there really in our world? So it's hard to fight against that. You have to create habits that you may not have. You have to, like, I have you've seen my office with all the books, and there's a whole shelf on communication. It's all the best communication books, right? And
constant progress.
Constantly trying to figure it out, because even at my age and with all my experience, I'm still coming up against I'm hitting my head on the brakes occasionally.
And the methods of communication have evolved in this time as well. And people get lazy with it. Now we're seeing the onset of AI imitating people. And it's just, I'm going to be one of these curmudgeons. I can tell already. Some of this stuff comes into it will change relationships. It will change how people communicate. And we have to evolve with it.
And that's a really important piece, because the clients that we have, my father's the greatest generation, the whatever generation, they're mostly out of the marketplace. And so we're now working on the younger generation's cars, and they don't communicate like we did at all, right?
About their cars and in their marriages and everything else. Yeah.
All aspects of their life, etc. I'm still like, I want a phone call. Don't call me, please. Actually, text, if you want to get a hold of me,
text the call.
But my answer is, did you talk to that person? And I don't mean, I sent them a text or I sent them an email.
Yep.
I mean, did you talk to that person? Right? I don't know why, but my younger generation people around me, they'll do anything to avoid a phone call.
Sure.
Right?
Even the term call, Cecil, you know this too. In Dale Carnegie's day, a call was a physical visit to an establishment. They called on that place, and that transformed with the technology into what it is. And the call was a beautiful, amazing thing that was more convenient than going a place. And now we have in-betweens on all of those, and it's just getting further apart.
It just keeps, And so the challenges are still the same challenges, right? Mm-hmm. I need to listen. I need to pay attention. We can't stop ourselves from making assumptions, because everything is based on our history and what we think, right? We can stop ourselves from carrying out the assumption without checking, right? Correct. If we create the habit of doing that.
Check in, check on them, check up something.
So even when I'm doing did you understand that? Do you have questions about that? What's your interpretation of what I just said? A good salesperson, which, by the way, if you're a manager, if you're an owner, in order to be a good leader, you have to be a good salesperson. In order to be a good manager, you have to be a good salesperson. In order to be I think a good father, you have to be a good salesperson.
Yeah, right? Sales is a dirty word in some people's book, but we're all selling ourselves all the time.
Right. If you're a good salesperson, you create these sayings. Like, I have these, do you understand that? Does that make sense to you? These one line things that you learn and you practice, and then they come out like you learned them from birth, even though you really didn't. And that helps you not to make assumptions, or once you've made the assumption, to make sure that your assumption is accurate and not completely off the mark.
Well, and this snaps focus back in as well. A lot of times it forces the brain to, oh yes, I must attempt to take these facts that have just been spit at me, because listening's tough sometimes. And tell me if this is true for you. One of my pitfalls, especially after a hard day at the shop, come home, my wife's telling me things about her day. Mind is elsewhere. I love that she's learned to ask the questions. Does that make sense?
In my house, it's interesting because even in my workplace, if you want something from me, don't come and tell me about it and then ask me for a yes or no, because 99% of the time it's going to be no.
Okay.
If you want something, present it, give me some time to mull it over and think about it. And then the answer is almost always yes. And so that's like when I would come home, if my wife started unloading on me right away, I wasn't there. I mean,
Right.
physically I was,
Yeah.
but mentally I was not.
No, but she's been with little people all day, and here's a big person to talk to, right?
Yeah. And then the
Oh,
feedback, if you're not there and you're not in the moment, then the feedback that you're giving is really bad feedback.
Yeah, and it was just bad timing.
Yeah. And if you're
Yeah.
if you're an S personality, you're taking that feedback and you're assuming, oh, they must be mad at me because they're not giving me the feedback that I want and desire, that I really probably should have. And again, goes right into creating habits. If you are like me, you have to actively pursue a habit of listening, a habit of asking questions, a habit of, if you've made an assumption, check back and make sure your assumption was correct.
Yeah. And what we're hitting on here too, I think it's related. One of the things I've told people, a big mistake I've made as I started traveling more in my line of work, we go to a lot of the same shows. That was new for me a few years ago, even to be doing that much travel. And my wife is my ride to the airport, and she's my ride to pick me up. And what do you think I do when I'm walking to the airport and finally get my bags in the car? All the emotional energy that I've kept on for this whole trip, I shut it off.
Yeah, and
At the wrong time, and then she's the one receiving me at that moment. And now what would be a stoic sullen, almost just like, all right, I'm relaxing. I'm relaxing too soon for the person that matters most to me.
One of the other habits maybe is kind of leaving it. It's funny because if you're like, we have this leadership intensive, which is a very focused leadership, and everybody that's taken it is just super impressed with it. I don't teach it, right? But if you're
Michael's teaching that, right?
Yeah. And he's amazing. I'm very lucky.
I wanted to go in Colorado. It didn't work out with my itinerary. When you guys have one a little closer, I got to make it in.
Oh, it talks about truth tapes and stuff like that. And one of the things I'm saying is like, but I still have doubts. So if I have doubts and my truth is this, and it's not necessarily, I don't know, the truth that's going to get me where I want to be or whatever. So I raise my hand in class and I'm like, well, yeah, but I box things up. Like if I'm coming home from work and I've got a really severe problem, which if you own a company, holy crap,
you
right?
might have a financial crisis on your hands.
Could be anything.
Futures in question.
Yeah, a potential lawsuit, a lot of things, right? And so what I do with that is I have a picture of I don't know if you remember ever seeing Get Smart. Like at the beginning of the series, he was a secret agent and he would walk through all these different doors.
Oh, I do remember this.
Right.
Yes. Yep.
And so I'm a visual guy. So I have a picture of a room way back here in the back of my head that you have to walk through all these different doors. And then you have to unlock the room. It's got big chains around it and big locks and everything. And I box up whatever the doubt is or whatever the stuff is that I'm carrying with me. And I put it in that room, and then I lock it in the room and I back out so that I'm not taking that and carrying that with me the whole time. Now, by the way, tomorrow when I come back to work, I might go back in the room and open it up and deal with it, but I might not, right? In the leadership intensive, he's saying, well, that's not necessarily healthy. Like hiding things away is not healthy. And it's probably not healthy for your long term. But if you're doing it short term, if you're creating a habit of, okay, when I go out, I do these events, you've done them 3 days and you're on for 3 days. Nobody that hasn't really done it, even if you're attending the event as an attendee, it's not the same as being the guy, right? The guy. And so you come home and you're on the airplane and you're flying home and you're wiped, right? All of the adrenaline,
Yep.
all of the adrenaline that you've carried for 3 days is now left your body. And now I'm going to walk through the airport and then I'm going to get in the car with my wife. I'm wiped. And so I have the habit of on the flight, when I realize that I'm at that place where all of a sudden my energy level's half of what it was or a third of what it was, then I'm like, okay, how do I put some of this stuff away so that when I get in the car with my wife, because she picks me up at the airport, it's a 35-minute drive. That 35 minutes is our time now to have a conversation about what's been going on in her life. And she'll ask me about the event and what happened, and I'll give her some highlights. But I'm really trying to find out what's been going on with her, right?
Nice.
And so I like the fact that I can have that 35 minutes in the vehicle, but I had to create the habit of in the airport or on the plane getting ready for that.
Yeah.
Right?
This is part of the event. This is part of the event. This is part of what I need to be prepared for when I go and when I come home.
Yeah, because and on the way there is pretty cool because your energy level's kicking up. So that 35-minute drive there, you're like, I'm gonna do this, and we're gonna it's gonna be so cool. We're gonna sign up 1 million clients. Everybody's gonna see how great. And on the way home is a little different. So
it is. It really is, and that's true with going to work and coming home too. That commute for me, not an easy commute, and that's part of the factor. I don't know, what was your commute like going from your shop to home those years you were in the shop?
At the shop, it was at the most about 10 minutes.
Okay. Oh, that's not very long.
Not heavy traffic.
So mine was
like
heavy traffic in 30
today.
minutes. Yeah, but I learned to brain off, and I could transition from shop mode to home mode. Very important. And I wasn't great at it, especially when my kids were little. I had some stressful years there. We'll talk about that more sometime on family business topics. You'll be great on this.
Children.
Oh man. And they need dad coming home in good mood. And it's hard, but the part, and I'll talk more on this in future episodes too, working from home, losing that commute and turning off work to go simply downstairs.
Yeah.
Dude, I got to go for a walk or something sometimes before I can re-engage in family mode versus work mode. That's a whole different dynamic too. But that commute, 10 minutes is probably one of those variables there too, where your mind was just still at work.
I didn't have the skill set back then that I have now. It's funny, when I ran the shop in Mountain View, I was in Utah. So to come home, I had to fly for an hour and a half and then drive for 35 minutes. And that was like, it was a blessing because, again, being visual, I was like, while I'm on the plane, I'm taking off my suit, which is my work suit, and leaving it, and I'm putting on my family suit, right? And what I really tried to do, so I ran the shop about 6.5 years in Utah. We lived in Mountain View, California. We lived in Utah. I really tried to learn kind of the habit of switching suits, right? So when I was home, and I was 95% home and 5% business.
Sure.
And when I was at work, I was 95% business and 5% home. And then, of course, I got in the habit of talking to my wife every night, and sometimes my kids. The other thing is, I think we have to practice, and I think this goes from both sides. If you're like right now, I'm staging my house to get it sold. My wife is staying with my daughter. And so we won't see each other. Maybe on a weekend we will. When I pick her up, she's handing me a bunch of bills. First thing, I can see them in her hand. And my okay, let's enjoy each other and have fun lamp just got completely extinguished.
Yeah.
We have to make a habit of, if I've got crappy stuff to deal with, and to me, bills are crappy stuff, right?
Yeah. No one enjoys it.
Don't put them in an envelope, hide the envelope, bring it with you before you leave the house and go back. Leave it on my desk so that when I go to my desk, I can see it, but don't let it cloud the whole 2 days we're going to spend together, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we have to get in the habit of not hitting our loved ones, the people we care about, with like the bad crap every single time that we see them, right?
Yeah.
Because if we do, again, put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? It's going to cloud a lot of your conversations and a lot of your time if the other person can't be there for you because they're thinking what's in that pile, or oh my God, she went to the doctor 3 more times and now there's more doctor bills, or, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
We need to be careful about not only how we communicate with each other and how we're interpreted, but also when.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a key thing. When you're going through a transition, these are serious things. Jewish culture, there's the sitting Shiva after death. They recognize, even from going from sleep to waking up, this is a transition that needs time. And you don't just jump in and go shovel your sidewalks. That's why people have heart attacks when the wintertime shoveling sidewalks. They got up quick early, go and do an exertion, and it's no good for you. And it's a jolt. Any of these things can be a jolt. So creating that transition and creating a positive one through those things to recognize that these are transitions.
Yeah.
Recognize those transitions. Let them happen in the way they need to, and create that transition to be the way that you want it to be. I think that's a great takeaway.
And I would also say in communication, we have to be conscious of our communication.
Yeah.
The more good habits we create, probably the less conscious we need to be. But I think if I'm talking to someone where it's important to me, I'm always conscious of the communication. And I can tell you, I got size 14 and a half shoes, and I just love to put one of those shoes fully in my mouth sometimes, but it's never my intention. And if I'm more conscious, then I do that less often, right? I need to be aware of who I'm talking to. I understand when a customer calls or a potential client calls that there's a relationship there and there's a process I want to take them through. I want them to come in, or I want them to buy my service or whatever. But I also have to listen to that person first to find out if this is the person that I now want to do business with, right? And if the two things, if my business lines up with what they want or what they need, then now I can bring them in. But if it doesn't line up, then I can't bring them in, because all it'll do is cause me misery, right?
Yeah,
and
we don't need that.
I think we do the same thing. If we create the habit, we do the same thing with our wives and our kids and our families. Is I'm conscious about, what I want from this relationship, but I'm also very aware of who I'm talking to, and I'm trying to figure out how could we align our intentions and, live a life. Because none of us, I don't know, if you told me, oh, we've been married 40 years and it's just been fantastic, I would say, man, whatever pill you're taking that helps you forget all the stuff that made you nuts, give me that pill. That's the one I want to take.
No, yeah. We're celebrating 20 years this year, and we marvel at the fact that, we've been pretty good. We made it, but we went through some things, is the acknowledged things. We've gone through some stuff. And I think, like what you were touching on there too, I think when the two people have that recognition that we are on a journey and there is continual self-improvement, that both are committed to that. This is the conversation I have with my wife. We make this commitment to each other. Like, if I am not who you believe I am or should be, you have to tell me.
Yeah,
I want to know, and create that space for the feedback.
That also, you need to understand who the person you're communicating with is as much as you can. So I've studied body language, micro expressions, personality profiles, etc., and probably more in a need to understand myself than somebody else. But we need to understand, like, if your wife is an S, like my wife, they don't want conflict. They'll do almost anything to avoid conflict, including not bring something up that they should bring up, right? The thing about the supporters is they'll let it fester and let it fester and let it fester. And when it does boil over, it's 10 times bigger than what it could have been if we talked about it 2 months ago. Kent's funny. He's like, me and my wife, if there's something wrong, we talk about it. He chides me because I'll be like, I'm really upset with your mom right now. Well, have you talked to her about it? No, I haven't.
I'm picturing him saying it.
I'm trying to work it out in my head first, right? But the S's, they don't want to have conflict. And the D's will rush into conflict like it's, I don't know, ambrosia, like it's the best thing in the world and they got to have it. And we marry often, or I don't know, today marriage is probably an old-fashioned word. but we live
Seems to
with,
be.
we
Yeah.
companion with, whatever you want to call it, opposites of ourselves. It's pretty rare you find two Ds
Yeah.
living together that's successful, right?
No, I think that's
Um,
true. I think that's very true. Yeah, one of the conversations I'll be having with my wife here is really the concept of speaking up when they're feeling it, because that's exactly what the supporter types did. I was actually talking with Tracy, our producer on the show here too, an email. She had a scenario that she told a story of the wrong wine was being brought to the table. No one spoke up. They ended up drinking it anyway. But it's like there's little examples of this all the time, but it's a habit. It's something that you either do or you don't do. And if you create the habit for doing it, well, you're going to get more of the results with the relationships that you have.
It's funny too, because if you're very aware, which I like to think I am, I'm probably less aware than I think, but my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they love to go to Olive Garden. So we went to Olive Garden, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and they didn't bring us our appetizer till they served the food. Then they brought the appetizer and it was burnt. I mean, it was so black, there's no way you could eat it. And I called the waiter over. I said, "Would you eat this?" Right? And the waiter said, "No." I said, "Well, then why did you bring it to the table? You could have said, 'Hey, the appetizer got burnt. What can I do?' Whatever." So I gave him a little education. If you look at my mom or my mother-in-law and my wife,
they're mortified, weren't they?
they're just dying because I brought the waiter over, right?
Yeah.
And then the manager came over right afterwards, and the manager was like, "Do we have a problem?" And I said, "Well, not yet." But we left, and my wife and my mom were like, "Oh my God," So I'll give you my wife and I get married. We go over to my mom and dad's house, right? And she doesn't know my parents at all, really, right? We got married.
Okay.
We met each other 3 days later. We got engaged. 3 months later, we got married.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, well, I'm a bit of a crazy person. That's another story for another time.
Very confident.
Yeah, well, I knew what I wanted. Let's put it that way. Or I thought I wanted. Okay. So anyway, we go over to my parents' house, and it's a normal day at my parents' house. And by the way, my mom didn't throw anything. They didn't scream F you at the top of their lungs.
There's a lot of between the lines on a normal day.
Yeah,
isn't there?
but they didn't do any of that. And we get in the car to go home, and I look at my wife, and she is white as a ghost. I mean, she's just like, she looks at me and she goes, "Oh my God, are we ever going to go back there? That was horrible." And I was like, "Well, nobody got hurt. Nobody got hit. Nobody got screamed at. That was a pretty good day," right? That's the dichotomy. That's that thing that says, wow, my experience, all this experience I've had is not healthy. It's not normal.
No, radically
right?
different. The parallels in my own family dynamics are uncanny.
And by the way, when you said you're going to have your wife on the podcast,
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, I don't know what you're going to bribe her with, because my wife, she would not come on the podcast. You could promise her anything, and she would not do it. She got asked to teach Sunday school, and
Oh my gosh.
little kids, 4 or 5 year olds, and she would puke.
Oh my gosh.
Every
that
Sunday.
much anxiety over
with little kids.
Even little kids. Well, little kids are a lot scarier than adults. I think they're mean.
Yeah, well, by the way, just so you know, adults are mean too. Just
They
so
sure
you
can
know,
be.
I think,
Yeah.
man.
They always filter themselves better than a 3-year-old. But
we had to go, and literally we had to go to our bishop and go, "She can't do this."
Oh my gosh.
I can't
I
have
actually
her.
backed out.
Yeah, because I couldn't have her throwing up every Sunday before going to church.
No.
Just couldn't do it. So if you can get your wife on the podcast, dude,
it'll be fun.
God bless you, right?
It's gonna be fun.
I don't know
think
how
she's
I would
already
do it.
worked herself out of the anxiety. We were on a long walk together, talking about a lot of things and that shoulder to shoulder time is really good in a marriage. Going for walks together, it's precious.
Whenever you can be kind of alone together, I think you're doing like what I call an innocuous activity together. Then you can cover a lot of other things
things open up.
It's extremely valuable. Yeah,
it is. Oh, this has been a great chat, Cecil. We're going to have to do this again on a number of topics, especially as we talk about family business dynamics.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, well, your experience was so parallel with some of our experiences. My grandfather, my brother and I, and my dad too. And my dad being the calm, stoic one because my grandpa was the guy with the tongue. Oh my goodness. It goes on and on. There's a lot of stuff, and it changes us as communicators, I think. It hardens us in a lot of ways, but I think it's made you who you are today, and we certainly appreciate it. So,
the hard parts and the soft parts, they're all come together. I am who I am, and no matter who you are, you have to be happy with who you are and understand you're a religious guy. God gives us a lot of grace. It knows that we're not perfect. We weren't intended to be perfect at this stage of our evolution, etc.
Yeah.
So
God for grace.
And I'm pretty happy in my skin, and you have to be happy in your skin, because if you're not, you can't invite another person in.
Right? Yeah. Nope. And that's a great point to wrap on here. No, the next episode we'll have to figure that out sometime and get that on the books here, Cecil. But once again, I want to thank you for being a sponsor of the podcast here, but just for your wisdom, and congratulations on breaking that cycle in your own family too. I think that's a powerful thing to be able to do. It shapes the future in really brilliant ways.
Well, thank you for having me on and allowing me to, spew for a while.
No, I think people get to see another side of you. They don't always get to see it. It always focuses on the business stuff more. And there's a person, sometimes a soft one, sometimes a hard one too, behind everybody. But hey, this is why it's good to speak up. And thanks so much, everyone, for listening to this podcast. And I'll always remind you, before you speak up, listen up. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Speak Up, Effective Communication with Craig O'Neill on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Craig on your favorite podcast listening app and on his YouTube channel. Let him know what you'd like him to speak up about. Craig is all for advancing the automotive service aftermarket.